In terms of the maturity of the maize crop for harvesting, we need to make sure that we don't get the crop too early when it's wet and the maize hasn't had time to form to starch, and conversely we don't want to get it too dry. So we were looking to get a target dry matter of the maize silage into the clamp of between 28 and 35% dry matter. Fermentation is an important part of conserving our maize crop. If the crop is too wet, then we have got to have a more extensive fermentation where there's a potential for the wrong acids to be produced. So getting crop maturity right is very, very important. One way to check the maturity of the crop and to ensure the correct dry matter is to look at the milk line on the cob. Take a cob off the plant, break the cob in half and look where the milk line is. Where the milk line is and the dry matter of the cob has direct correlation to the dry matter of the plant to help us achieve the 28 to 35% dry matter that we're after. If the crop is too dry and is over mature, then we'll have an excessive amount of starch in the plant. So we need to make sure that we have a corn processor fitted to the harvester. What we don't want to see is maize feed going through the animal and appearing in the dung. So it's important that we process the corn starch as it goes through the machine. But obviously we've gone too dry then, really. It's too mature, and we've moved away from our target of 28 to 35% dry matter. We should consider the use of an additive when producing maize silage, and it's important to choose the right additive, one that controls fermentation and also controls aerobic spoilage, to make sure that we're covering both of the issues which affect maize silage production. Our next area of importance really with maize harvesting is getting the crop into the clamp. Our biggest issue with harvesting maize and ensiling is oxygen. Oxygen is our big enemy. So bringing the maize into the clamp, we need to get as much oxygen out of it as possible. We need to bring it in and fill in 6-inch layers, no more ideally. Otherwise we can't get the compaction we need. And also we need to be aware of the amount of forage that's coming in and the amount of weight we need on the pit to get it compacted. Far too many maize clamps just don't have the right amount of compaction. In America they've done a lot of work with numbers, and they're probably working with drier crops, so with our wetter crops perhaps not as high as this, but working somewhere around the rules of 40% of the weight of the forage that's coming in needs to be on the clamp. So if we had 100 tons of maize appearing in the clamp, we want to get up towards 40 tons of weight of machinery on the clamp. Squeezing the air out is important, but then keeping the air out is as important, and getting to an anaerobic state within the clamp. So the use of side sheets, the use of top sheets is imperative, and the modern oxygen barrier sheet can have a big impact on keeping the air out of the clamp. The other thing is we're seeing more and more incidents of birds attacking silage clamps, so the use of some netting on top of the clamps to keep birds away from it can have a big impact too. When it comes to feed out, we've had a clamp which has been anaerobic. We've got all of the air out of it, but we're going to go aerobic by taking the sheet off. When we bring oxygen back into the clamp, there are yeasts and molds which will always be present in the clamp, but we want to reduce their activity. The way to do this is have a really tidy face, keep it clean, remove excess forage away from the floor on the silage pit so that there's no spores travelling around the front of the clamp. Keep sheets away from the front of the clamp face. What happens if you have a sheet on the face? It creates a microclimate which warms up, and again those yeasts and molds can start off again. So tidy face when feed out is taking place is imperative.